It's been a crazy news cycle, and there are so many stories to get to, but we just never have enough time. So let's do a little quick recap on the news cycle, what's in the headlines. And we're going to start off with New York City. Now, there's this video out there right now that has so many Americans outraged because it shows NYPD officers getting assaulted by a group of migrants. Yeah, so those illegal migrants who have illegally broken into our country. It's strange when they are also breaking more laws when they finally get to cities like New York City. But here they are gaining up on these cops and assaulting them. And the part in this that's outrageous is they've actually all been released without cash bail, which is, like we've spoken about before, is a common theme in New York, as many of you know. Back in 2019, New York got rid of cash bail for nonviolent crimes. So this one is just mind blowing to me. I want to bring in a New Yorker who knows all about this, and he's very, very familiar with it. Let's bring in Gavin Wax. He's the president of New York Young Republican Club. Gavin, thank you for jumping on with us today. We greatly appreciate it.
No, it's great to be here. I'm excited to talk about this, crisis facing New York.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because I left New York, and I don't I don't want to rub that in your face, Gavin, but I know many of my New York friends are still there, and this is the type of things you have to deal with. So, based on what you're seeing here in this video, is this a common theme in New York? Are migrants really causing this much of a disruption in New York City, or is this just a rare occasion where a mob of them are just becoming violent towards the NYPD?
No, this is certainly a commonality among the illegal migrants in this city. They have a higher rate of criminality associated with them. I mean, they're criminals to begin with because they're here illegally. That's the first step, and then any other crimes they engage in is just icing on the cake. But they've only added to this sort of anarchy that has plagued the streets and subways of this city now for many years. We already have our own homegrown crime wave facing the country at large, but in particular urban America and places like New York City, where we have many derelict district attorneys and left wing judges who refuse to hand out tough sentences, who refuse to prosecute crimes. And you have a legislature in Albany and in the city council that passes, routinely passes laws that tie the hands of cops and reward criminals. It's there's sort of anarcho tyranny, rewarding the criminals, punishing law abiding citizens, and tying cops hands behind their backs. And you add a migrant crisis into it, into the mix. You have all these people. We don't know where they're from. We don't know where they are. We can't keep track of them. We don't know their criminal histories. And they're just running rampant on the streets, committing violent acts against, peaceful New Yorkers, and even now against NYPD officers themselves. And they'll be let out on a desk appearance ticket, no bail, and just free to roam the streets again. There's absolutely no repercussions for these people. And of course, they're not going to show up for their next court hearing or whatever it may be. They're completely walking away scot free. So this is the Democrat ruled New York City at its I wouldn't say finest, but at its lowest.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because back in 2018, I guess when I read through criminal justice reform, I knew that was I had to leave. Ultimately, when they put this bill together, they included possession of child pornography as a non-violent crime, and I realized I couldn't live in a society with people who think that's not violent. I mean, it's disturbing in itself, and it's upsetting that you see videos like this of NYPD officers getting assaulted and the suspects involved in this situation. I mean, they're on camera. These are obviously violent people that you should not want in your country, and yet here we are giving them a second or third opportunity to commit more violent acts. But also, I want to talk a little bit about NYPD recruitment. Obviously, it's at all-time lows. Nobody wants to join the force, which is rare because I grew up on Long Island. Everyone would leave Long Island and go work in New York City, and the NYPD is one of the forces that a lot of New Yorker Long Islanders did jump on and join. But because of incidences like this, you're not getting NYPD officers, and then you're also getting, which is interesting because I saw this earlier today, the how many steps ban, which was pretty much passed. New York City Council overrode the mayor's veto, which was interesting enough in itself. But it seems to be a New York City Council. There's very few people who are against it, but they seem to hate police officers. And so ultimately, this passed with flying colors, and it's just another incentive on why so many New Yorkers are not going to become NYPD officers and why they're leaving in the first place. So, Gavin, why is this bill horrible for New Yorkers and the NYPD as a whole?
Well, listen, you brought up a lot of great points. I know from many friends of mine that serve in the NYPD, some in senior leadership roles, that recruitment is facing a there's a massive problem with recruitment. They're struggling to bring in new talent, and obviously they faced budget cuts, both because of the migrant crisis and also the previous defund the police movement. And obviously, with everything that's been going on, losing things like lots of protections that come with qualified immunity, all these new regulations that predate this most recent act that we're about to discuss. But all the paperwork and all the bureaucracy that the city of New York places on top of officers, it's just not really the kind of job that a working or middle class individual, either in the five boroughs or Long Island, New Jersey, and in any of the suburbs, would like to take on anymore. And the NYPD at one point was a real vehicle, for progress for a young individual looking to have a good income, have good benefits, and have a good job and good career path. It's just not the same anymore. So, and that's a very sad thing. And now you see acts like they just passed recently, the Too Many Stops Act, or whatever the heck they're calling it. This is just more paperwork, more bureaucracy, more ways and more means for the city bureaucracy to enrich itself while punishing law enforcement officers for doing their job and for basically making the city less and less safe for New Yorkers. I mean, New Yorkers overwhelmingly view crime as one of the top issues facing their city. And we have this elected council, the city council of elected buffoons who are so radical, who are so far to the left, who are so progressive, they can't even take their blinders off for 1 minute to respect the issues and the concerns of their own constituents. But this is what happens when you have a one party city and a one party town and a one party state. There's no political competition, and you get these absolute radical ideologues running things into the ground without consequence. And this is why we as Republicans that are still here need to fight tooth and nail to grow the party, get it to a point where we can at least maintain a veto. And I give Mayor Adams props for at least having the courage to veto this. It's a good sign that his administration is at least taking some of this stuff seriously. I only wish that his colleagues in the Democrat Party were as sympathetic to the view of the vast majority of New Yorkers that crime is completely out of control. But this is just another day of lunacy coming out of City Hall, and I'm hoping it ends soon. I'm hoping we can have some, election results in the next few years that will turn this around.
Yeah, New York City Council is so crazy that like Eric Adams actually looks moderate to Republican at this point. And he's not. He's a former member of the NYPD, but ultimately he between this and the immigration issue that they're having right now in New York City, he's been pretty outspoken about both. And so it's been interesting to kind of watch him maneuver around all of this. Even with the protests going on with the pro-Palestinian protesters, I mean, he's been pretty outspoken about that as well. So it's interesting to see from a Democrat leading New York City. His colleagues, though, they're on the crazier side of things. I want to jump to Iowa because there was some incidences that have been occurring lately that are quite interesting. But this one's regarding the Capitol over there. If you recall, I've spoken about it previously, but a man named Michael Cassidy, actually, he's a former congressional candidate, I should mention, from Mississippi. He actually kind of I think he keeps saying decapitated. It was a satanic, we have the picture here. It was a satanic temple display that they had set up in the Capitol, and he cut off the head, I guess. It's disgusting. It's disturbing. But obviously, as a believer, this is something that you do not allow to happen, especially in your state's capital. And so ultimately, he did have initial charges, but they actually just stepped it up and they've charged him with a hate crime, which is quite interesting because this doesn't appear to be a hate crime unless you consider satanicness, like worshiping Satan as a religion, which many of us don't. It's demonic in itself. Gavin, what do you make out of all of this? Because charging this as a hate crime seems to be disgusting to many of us, I think.
No, this really pisses me off. I mean, first off, I'll
Yeah.
start by saying that Satanism is not a religion. It should not be afforded the protections that come with, religious rights and freedoms and liberties. This is a mockery to all religion. It's a mockery to anyone who believes in God, who believes in a moral world. It's a disgusting group of people, and they should not be able to make a mockery of Christianity and this country's very respectful religious freedoms and liberties with these stupid displays. And this is happening not in a blue city, not in a blue state. This is not happening in New York. This is happening in conservative and evangelical Iowa, where they have majorities in both chambers there of their state legislature, where they have a Republican governor in Kim Reynolds, and you still see this pastor, this Christian, who destroyed this satanic display, and I give him all the props in the world. We need thousands more like him who are willing to not only believe in the principles of their faith, but actually act on it. Good for him. We have a lot of people that I call them religious hucksters. They use religion as a way to advance their own ends, usually grifting in the political process, but they hardly act Christian themselves. He saw a problem and he dealt with it, so kudos to him. And I would just ask, where's Governor Kim Reynolds? Where's all these state legislators in Iowa? They were all taking fat checks from the DeSantis PAC, what was it, Never Back Down, and all these other entities during the primary process, or excuse me, the caucus process as part of the Republican primaries. And, they were all talking about the social conservative evangelical credentials of people like Ron DeSantis. Okay, well, why don't they put their money where their mouth is? They got these fat, checks from those PACs. Why don't they actually defend a fellow Christian and end this ridiculous prosecution of him in their home state? These charges should be dropped immediately. He should be fully exonerated, and they should bring a bill to the floor of the Iowa legislature saying that they are no longer going to extend any protections to these satanic displays in the Capitol, and they're going to extend full protection to the fullest extent that they can to individuals that go after these displays, because these displays are meant to instigate. They're meant to cause a reaction. They're meant to divide and poke fun at all God-fearing Christians. So good on him for taking this down, and shame on all the Republican legislatures in the state of Iowa for doing practically nothing to defend him and allowing this nonsense to continue.
Yeah, it really seems like a safe issue for them to get behind and to speak out on. And for some reason, they can't even do the bare minimum in this situation, which is disturbing. But we're seeing it all over the place. And I think it's interesting that's happening in Iowa. But ultimately, I don't know. I don't understand why we're not seeing people like Kim Reynolds step up and say, "This is ridiculous, guys. Stop this." And they're even stepping it up by adding the hate charge to it, which wasn't initially one of the charges he was facing. So it's
I'm sure
disturbing.
they're going to blame I'm sure they're going to blame some kind of federal statute or
Mhm.
minor rule or something in the code, and to that they should just have the balls to say, who cares? Look at what Texas is doing. Look at what other states are doing. These if there's some supposed law on the books somewhere in the federal bureaucracy, then just tell them to pound sand and tell them to enforce it themselves. But this is coming from a local Iowa county. I forget the name of the county that's prosecuting him, and they could easily pass some laws and extend either some kind of legislative or executive authority to stop this from happening and prevent it, more importantly, from happening again in the future, both the display itself and this ridiculous prosecution. But they're gonna find any excuse they can to sit on their hands and do nothing. So shame on them, and shame on all these people that proudly pump up their chests to claim how evangelical and Christian they are, and then when it comes to a literal demonic display in this right in the center of their own capital, they can't even muster up the strength to do anything about it. I mean, that's just the height of hypocrisy and being utterly pathetic.
Yeah, no, it is pathetic, and it's interesting that no one's standing by his side and really speaking out on his behalf, politically, I guess I should say. But this is Polk County is the one who's prosecuting him in this, so the state definitely could step in and say something and do something about it. It's just they don't want to, and we see that so many times. We see it in Fulton County too. I mean, literally, I could. We're going to talk about it later in the show, but oh my gosh, Fannie Willis's office. I mean, the amount of just ethical violations going on right now, and the fact that the charges are still sticking, and Brian Kemp hasn't stepped in, the governor of Georgia, and said, "All right, guys, like we got it. What's going on here?" Even today,
He's
earlier today, she's being accused of misusing federal dollars funding, and there's it's on audio. We have the tapes, and for some reason, and they fired the person who was the whistleblower in that situation, and for some reason, we still can't get Kemp to speak out, or even Chris Carr, their attorney general. So it's a
It's
common
it's a
thing.
corrupt third world cesspool, and you
Mhm,
have these these establishment good old boy Republicans
mhm,
in Georgia who don't want to touch it because obviously that they don't like Trump because Trump called them out on all of their other nonsense over the last few years, especially as it pertained to the election, and they
mhm,
rather do nothing. So, I mean, this is the kind of fight we're up against. We're fighting a two front war. We're fighting on one hand these corrupt left wing district attorneys like Fannie Willis who are so brazen and blatant in their corruption and their incompetence and their how politicized they are in carrying out the duties of their office. And then you have these completely weak, bought off, just limp wristed Republicans like Kemp who don't want to do anything in their own state, who don't want to exercise any authority or any power to stop this nonsense. And they have majorities, and again, they have legislative, but these are all trifecta Republican states. They could pass bills, they could sign bills, they could enforce laws, they could use other laws that are on the books, and they choose to do nothing. And this is why Republicans are getting sick of the Republican elected officials, which surprisingly is always in these deep red states. By the way, we were talking about New York City, the city council. I mean, I know we have a lot of real fighters in the city council. Where I grew up in Queens, it's represented by Vicky Palladino in the city council. She's going into that chamber and fighting tooth and nail for her constituents against these radical left wing Democrats pushing the anti cop bills. And then you go to deep red Georgia, deep red Iowa, and I'm sure we're going to talk about what's happening, I think, in Montana as well. And these Republicans do absolutely nothing when confronted with all of these, pressing issues that are, very near and dear to their constituents. We can't catch a break here. We have these weak leaders with R's next to their name, and we have these ferocious Democrats who are doing everything they can to advance their radical agenda. So we're getting the worst of all worlds.
Yeah, and you mentioned Montana. Montana's interesting right now, guys, because there's a 14-year-old child who is saying that they want to transition into another gender. And unfortunately, what's going on with the parents now is the parents are at risk of losing custody of their 14-year-olds. And so it's all really disturbing. It's because they're refusing to partake in this brainwashing of their child by saying you need to transition or we're going to support you with the transitioning. But the child's 14 years old. And now they've lost custody, it looks like. And ultimately, this thing shouldn't be happening in this country. It shouldn't be happening with Republicans in office and in power, but it is, Gavin. I mean, as we just described, they don't want to stick their neck out and talk about these issues. But if you think you're safe because you're in Montana, these things are happening and they're happening in places you wouldn't suspect them to happen in, right, Gavin?
Right. These are the places that we should be having, wins under our belt, where we should be able to show off strong Republican leadership. And let's use the word strong for a second. John Forte, that's Italian for strong. He's not acting strong at all. He's acting like a complete, weak, pathetic little man. I mean, I thought this guy used to be a wrestler or something. Why doesn't he show some backbone and protect the residents of his state, the constituents of his state, who are now having their child, forcibly removed to be experimented on with these irreversible, disgusting procedures that are going to be completely destructive to their physical and mental health for years to come. I mean, this is absolutely unreal. What is he, the Asha Hutchinson of his state? I mean, talk about another weak
Yeah.
loser. I mean, these guys have to get their heads out of their asses and actually do something for once. These are the bare minimum. I mean, I consider all of these things we're talking about the very bare minimum. I'm not going to necessarily give them so much props for doing it. This is what it's expected of them, and they can't even do it. So just one state after another, one Republican leader after another. I don't know if people have dirt on these guys. I don't know if
Mhm.
there's compromise. I don't know if they've just been bought and paid for. I don't know if they were just frauds the whole time, or maybe they're just stupid. Maybe all of the above. I don't know. But
Mhm.
I think a lot of people feel the same way you and I do, that we would like to see some real leadership, some real strength from Republicans for a change, and actually have them effectuate on their wins and effectuate when they're in government, and actually have a Republican conservative governing agenda. And instead, they choose to do nothing and write these long little X threads, which he did on X,
Mhm.
basically defending his inaction. It's just pathetic, and we really need to do a better job primarying these losers out and making sure people like this never get elected. But at the same time, so many of them, they said the right things and they end up just being such disappointments. So we have some real problems in the Republican Party across the country, and we have real problems in this country as a whole.
Yeah, we do. We do. I want to end it on like a little bit of a higher note. I don't know how high this is going to end, but it looks like Congresswoman Cori Bush, she's under investigation. Apparently, the Department of Justice is looking into her for potentially misusing campaign dollars, it looks like. Uh, she's quite the interesting character because we've spoken about her security issues, right? This is somebody who was elected because she was a BLM terrorist. She was with all those BLM terrorists back in 2020, and she somehow made her way to Congress, and then she was anti-police when she got there as well, and then she spent thousands and thousands of dollars on her own private security detail, which we all laugh at the hypocrisy behind that too. But ultimately now it looks like they're looking into her potentially misusing the funds surrounding security. This is quite interesting, Gavin. I don't know what to make of it, only because I don't trust our Department of Justice at this point, being that it's being run by the Biden regime, and there's not much coming out of it that's good and honest these days. But what do you make of Cori Bush now being placed under investigation regarding this?
Well, nothing new from crazy Democrats, radicals like her. They're all, you scratch enough, you find tons of corruption under the surface. But my main point here would be like, why aren't we voting to remove her from Congress? I mean, we've set that precedent. She hasn't actually been convicted yet, but she's being investigated. So, we don't like her. Why don't we use the majority that we used to remove the gay fabulous George Santos? Why don't we use that same majority to remove her? Why don't we use that same majority to remove Elon Omar? Maybe even deport her back to Somalia. I mean, all these people. I mean, if they're being investigated right now, the new precedent has been set. If that you're being investigated for a crime, or if there's any semblance of impropriety or fraud, or if you've lied in the past, we have a very high standard now. I love it. So let's start removing all of these people from elected office. Let's start with her. Let's go on to Elon Omar and all the rest of them. Maybe we can start doing some in the Senate and just remove all of them from office. I mean, we have a good precedent now. We removed George Santos, so why stop? Let's keep doing it. Let's do it to their side as well. I think that's only fair. And let's get rid of all of these corrupt liars from Congress. And maybe at the end of the day, we'll have no one left. But if that's the case, I think it'll at least be a much more clean people's house than what we have right now.
Yeah, no, I was totally fine with us never even electing a speaker because honestly, if we could just slow down anything being done right now at this point, it's a big win for the American people because nothing coming out of DC is positive for us. But I think it's interesting, right? The Ilhan Omar stuff. First off, George Santos was kicked out of Congress over allegations and was never
Right.
convicted of anything, and so they jumped the boat on that one. But Republicans got in line, and many of them from New York, by the way.
Uh,
But ultimately, ultimately, I did message a few of them. Ultimately, it's quite concerning because Ilhan Omar openly is admitting that she's not working for the U.S. The Americans, the U.S. government. She's actually working for a foreign government on the behalf of
right.
another country while she's there. I mean, that if that's not sets precedent for expulsion, I don't know what else does. And yet, everyone's so quiet on the issue. This should be something that everyone could be able to unite on because I'm quite concerned because this woman literally said that she's going to prioritize Somalia over America,
Right.
and still there nothing. Where's the articles or expulsion being introduced? I don't see anything being done right now.
Right.
So
I,
I don't.
we heard
Maybe
about
we're just
George
wrapped up in
Santos for months
Mayorkas.
on end. Yeah, we heard about George Santos nonstop, and I'm not necessarily
Yeah.
defending him, but it's like, it was inundated. You couldn't move 2 feet without hearing the George Santos story. He was the second coming of he was the Antichrist himself. I mean, it's ridiculous. Then you got people like Omar and Bush and whoever else who are just as bad. You got Bob Menendez in the Senate. You got what's his name, Blumenthal. All these liars, all these crooks. You got Pocahontas up in Massachusetts. So kick them all out. I mean, great. We set the precedent. If there is a standard, fine. The standard was the mere allegation or investigation or just the indictment was sufficient for removal. Okay, that's fine. I can play by any standard you want to set as long as we're consistent here and it makes sense. Okay, if that is the new standard, that allegations, an investigation, or an indictment are fine, then we have plenty of people that we could start removing. And I think all the same Republicans, including our near and dear friends in New York, the Long Island Caucus, whatever, let's see them also enact a very consistent, logical approach and bring forth articles to remove all of these people from the people's chamber. They can start with Bush, they can continue with Elon, and I will cheer them on and I will donate to their reelection campaigns if they had the balls to do it. I don't think they do, but I hope to be wrong, and maybe I'll be wrong for a change.
Well, Gavin, you just gave me something to do. I'm going to reach out to their offices and ask them when they plan on doing this. So I'm
Yeah.
sure they'll be thrilled when they get that message from me. But I don't mind confronting them on this issue because I think it's important. Listen, George Santos, whether you like him or not, doesn't matter. He still was elected fairly. You overturned an election, and you took him out, and now it's not looking very good for Republicans in New York right now. But we shall see. So I'm going to get on that. I'm going to go send some emails out right after this. Thank you, Gavin Wax, for jumping on with us today. We greatly appreciate it.
To celebrate the new year, we're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
After a long day of filming, I've got to somehow take off all this makeup, but make sure that I put the nutrients back into my skin that it desperately needs. So I found this new skincare line. I have to tell you all about it. Gavin is all natural products. I use it twice a day. I use it in the morning and I also use it before I go to bed. First up, we have this clay cleanser. This is amazing because it takes up all of your makeup and it smells good too. Vitamin C is so important for brightening your skin. I also used to get super bad acne, and so it's helping, I guess, kind of like blending my acne scars a little bit so they're not so bright anymore. Here it is. It's the vitamin C serum. Just little pumps and put it on. And then don't forget your neck. Now moving on to step 3, that is their Uplift Serum. You don't have to do that much. So many times I have like these high-end products and I'm clogging my pores and you could see it. It's literally always around here and around my nose area. But for some reason, maybe it's just because it's natural and there's not all that garbage chemicals that are into it, it seems to clear it up so well. Step 4, it's the Bamboo Mist. It feels so amazing on your skin. I mean, you could literally name all these products that are in it. Definitely also like a cooling. See? And then this one, it's called Nourish. It's like this amazing cream, super light. You don't need that much of it. And always make sure you get under the eye area, not in your eyes. Gavin has done miracles for my skin. I highly recommend it to everyone, men and women, because guess what happens if you don't take care of your skin? It looks like you're aging quicker than what you really are aging. Natural products, all made in the USA. They don't support any of the garbage that comes out of China. It's not going to be found in your products. I promise you that. You have to get this product. Click down the link below. Gavin is the product name, and the promo code for 10% off right now is Breanna.
The only channel dedicated exclusively to world entertainment. I'm your host, Breanna Morello.
My journey into conservative media is quite unique. I was raised in Huntington, New York with my 6 siblings. My mom stayed at home and raised us all while my father worked. After graduating school, I landed in the sports world. I was a freelance reporter and a producer for several outlets. I worked for companies like Major League Baseball, NHL, ESPN+, and many others. But it wasn't until a couple of years in the sports world I realized it just wasn't for me. So I made the jump into the news industry. My first gig was at Fox News and Fox Business. I was a teleprompter operator. And although they say it's an entry-level position, it was extremely high pressure environment.
You stay classy, San Diego. I'm Ron Burgundy?
Damn it! Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter?
After spending a year over at Fox, I decided New York wasn't for me. So I picked up all my belongings and drove all the way down to South Florida. I moved to West Palm Beach before anyone else did. And then during my time in West Palm Beach, I landed at a local news station down here. I was so tired of having to just copy and paste over scripts from platforms like the Associated Press and other platforms where you just don't put thought process into it and there's somebody else who's generating a script for your anchor. So then I ended up landing at Newsmax.
I think Bloomberg has a really tough situation he's going through right now.
After spending quite some time over at Newsmax, I did head back to Fox. I started working for Maria Bartiromo as a booking producer for her Fox Business Weekend show, as well as Wall Street Journal at large. After finding out that Fox wanted me to comply with the local New York City vaccine mandate, I resigned. But I am extremely grateful because I am now a firm believer in independent journalism and strongly believe that will save our country. And so I'm honored to be on this independent platform and bring you the stories you won't see anywhere else. Join me in my journey on The Breanna Morello Show here on Rumble. And if you enjoyed that segment, make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to see the news before it becomes the news, you have to subscribe to our channel. And well, if you have a liberal friend that you're looking to save, make sure you share this content with them.